My mother tried to plan my 18th birthday party behind my back. I exposed her lies. Now she's furious, and I'm done. When my parents split when I was 6, they each built new lives. Although we had a joint custody arrangement, my mom remarried. When I was 9 to a man named Robert who had a daughter, Kira, 2 years older than me. My dad found Lila, a wonderful woman who he married when I was 12. Lila has been more of a mother to me than my own mom. She helped my dad raise me, takes an active interest in my life, comforts me, and gives me advice. We share interests and enjoy doing things together. Lila and I have even talked about her legally adopting me once I turn 18 because she is my real mom, and I want to make it official. Doing it sooner would be messy because of the joint custody agreement with my mom. My relationship with my biological mother, on the other hand, is practically non-existent. Even though I was forced to spend specific days with her, we never bonded because she devoted all her attention to Kira, who already had her own mother, even when she tried to include me. In activities, Kira always had to be involved, and we only did what Kira liked. Eventually, I started avoiding those visits because I was always ignored or sidelined. I preferred staying home with my dad and Lila. My dad understood, but he had to follow the court order. As I got older, he admitted he worried my mom might retaliate in court if he didn't comply. Knowing that, I didn't want to cause trouble for him, so I respected the schedule. Now, here's the main issue. I'm turning 18 in 2 weeks, and luckily my birthday falls on a day I'm with my dad. So, he, Lila, and I planned a simple party with family and friends at my favorite pizza place. A casual night where I can have fun with the people I care about and do what I enjoy, including karaoke. After booking everything, we sent out invitations, including one to my mom. Honestly, I didn't really want her there, but I figured this would be the last time I was obligated to include her since, after I turn 18, the court order won't apply anymore. We sent out the invitations 2 days ago and quickly received almost all the RSVPs, which helped us confirm the head count for the pizza place. The only one missing was my mom, who saw the text but didn't respond. I told my dad I wouldn't push it. If she didn't respond, it meant she didn't want to come, and I was okay with that. I think my dad was a little relieved too, even if he didn't say it. But the drama started this afternoon. My mom called furious, accusing me of being childish and planning everything without her. I was confused and reminded her that I've always planned my birthdays with Dad and Lila, and most of the time she didn't even remember. Complaining now felt hypocritical. That made her even angrier, and she started attacking me because Kira had been crying ever since I sent the invitation. Apparently, Kira had already planned a whole birthday party for me. I was speechless because Kira and I have zero relationship. She's the classic spoiled brat who always wants to be the center of attention, and my mom has always enabled that behavior. We've never gotten along. I just didn't understand why Kira would want to organize a birthday party for me. It made no sense. I asked her why she did it, especially without telling me. I mean, she didn't really think I wouldn't make any plans for my 18th birthday, right? It was ridiculous. My mom said it was supposed to be a surprise, and since I didn't tell her about my plans, she assumed I didn't want to do anything. I mean, she could have asked. But here's the worst part, the part that made me lose it. My mom started listing all the things Kira had prepared for my party, maybe to rub in my face what I would be missing. They were all Kira's favorite activities, things that I don't even like. She'd booked a fish restaurant for lunch, and I don't eat fish, not because of some silly whim, but because it makes me sick. Just smelling fish makes me feel nauseous. I'm not allergic, I had it checked. My body simply rejects it. She also booked an afternoon activity at a ranch near where my mother now lives, where you can ride horses. Well, I don't like it. I have. Nothing against horses, but the idea of riding one or getting really close to an animal that big scares me. Then she mentioned going back to my mom's house for a backyard barbecue, which I really didn't want to do because I didn't want to spend any more time with my mom than I had to. My mother also said they had already sent out invitations to everyone. At that point, I had to ask who she had sent them to because my friends, my dad, and his family hadn't received anything. It turns out the party was mostly for Robert's family, my mom's family, and Kira's friends. I mean, it was basically a party organized by Kira for herself, but under the pretense that it was for my birthday. So, I didn't hold back anymore. I laughed in my mother's face and hung up the phone. It was all too ridiculous to be true. My dad came to me a little while ago saying that my mom called him mad because I laughed in her face when she told me about the party they had organized for me. He was upset, saying that despite all the feelings I had for my mom, they were trying to do something nice for once. But I stopped him right away and explained in detail how the party had been organized, a detail that my mom had apparently left out. His expression changed quickly. He just said, "I'm going to make a phone call," and I've been hearing him yelling at my mother for at least 20 minutes now. Lila came to me after learning about the situation and said that as much as she could, relate to me, I was a little rude to laugh in my mother's face and hang up without explaining. She thought I should have spoken out like an adult, despite my feelings, and sorted things out in a civil and mature way. She wasn't angry, just a bit disappointed in how I acted. As soon as she left, I thought about my actions, and maybe I was a little harsh, but I don't think talking to my mom about it would have helped. Still, maybe I could have handled it better. I'm starting to think I was a bit of a coward in that moment. I talked to Lila about my reaction to my mother. Lila raised me on the importance of communication and always pushed me to talk about my problems so I could solve them. So I understand where her comment about my behavior came from, and I understand it. But I also gave her my point of view, telling her that the situation my mother was explaining was too absurd, and laughing is the only natural instinct that came to me while my mother was talking. At some point, I thought, is it a joke or some sort of bad prank? Is she making this all up? Because her bullshits was absolutely ridiculous. Lila said she understood me, and as many of you have told me, she just wanted me to understand that there will be situations in my life where I can't just laugh and hang up the phone, and she was just worried about my reaction. Anyway, we managed to clear the matter between us, and I'm happy. I also talked to my dad about the phone call he had with my mom. Apparently, my mom had an excuse for everything. She said that Kira just wanted to do a nice sisterly gesture on my big day, that she wanted to share her hobby riding horses with me, and that she never thought my fish problem was a real problem, but just a whim. In the restaurant they had booked, it made the best fish around. But that last one is a lie because when I was little, I threw up a couple of times in front of my mom just because we went somewhere that smelled strongly of fish, so she know very well it's a real issue for me. My dad retorted that nothing they had prepared had been done for me, that Kira had clearly planned the party for herself, and what kind of party was it for me if none of my important people were there? My mother didn't respond to this. She just started ranting that I was ungrateful and spoiled, so my father told her to go to hell and hung up the phone. After hearing this, I decided to follow another piece of advice you gave me and wrote a message to my mother. Adopting a more composed approach, I chose to craft a message employing utmost courtesy. I conveyed my regrets for the laughter, while emphasizing that her statements had reached a level of absurdity that left me with no alternative response. I reminded her of her consistent absence in nurturing a connection with me, her lack of genuine interest in my life, and her disregard for understanding me as an individual. Given that Kira's planned birthday celebration catered solely to Kira's preferences, I suggested they revel in it alongside their own circle of relatives and companions. Furthermore, I communicated the revocation of her invitation to my pizza gathering and advised her against attending, as her recent phone conversation had clearly demonstrated her priorities. I too would be setting my own priorities and she would not be among them. I affirmed my contentment with Lila as my maternal figure. Concluding the message, I extended well wishes to her and her family, while explicitly requesting that she refrain from contacting me further. She acknowledged receipt of the message, but offered no reply, a response I found perfectly acceptable. Any potential reply, I surmised, would merely consist of additional grievances regarding my supposed ingratitude and spoiled nature. Having long recognized the futility of engaging in dialogue with her, as she would invariably fail or feign failure to comprehend, I considered this final clarification as the definitive resolution to our strained dynamic, at least from my perspective. A sense of resolution washed over me, for which I extend my sincere gratitude to all of you. I likely would have resigned myself to severing ties following my 18th birthday without voicing my thoughts, but your collective input empowered me to recognize the necessity of establishing a firm boundary. In response to inquiries regarding my mother's capability to orchestrate a surprise festivity in my absence, my father had raised the same query, adding his bewilderment at her presumption that he would neglect to plan an 18th birthday celebration for me. My father, understandably, took the matter personally, chuckling a little. Her account entailed Robert fetching me on the morning of my birthday, elucidating the circumstances to Dad and Lila, and subsequently escorting me to Mom's residence, under a false pretense. I frankly struggled to envision the practicality of such a scheme. I would have staunchly refused to accompany my mother on any day not designated by the custody agreement, regardless of the fabricated justification. Moreover, I could never fathom abandoning Lila and Dad to spend my 18th birthday with Mom, even if the nature of our connection were different. Among all involved, the sole individual whom I absolve of culpability is Robert. Though our rapport has never been intimate, he consistently treated me with civility during our shared residency. He even repurposed his study, transforming it into a permanent bedroom for my use during my visits to my mother's abode. Our interactions did not evolve into a quintessential stepdaughter-stepfather bond, yet his efforts to demonstrate kindness were palpable. Therefore, I hesitate to fault him in this situation, as he likely harbors genuine conviction that the festivity is tailored to my preferences. Our acquaintance remains too superficial for him to discern my genuine tastes, unless my mother has enlightened him, which I find improbable. Fortunately, I entrusted none of my possessions to my mother's dwelling. All my belongings reside permanently at my father's home. Typically, I would assemble a suitcase comprising the necessities for my stays with my mother, only to retrieve it upon my return to my father's residence. I never felt secure in trusting anything to her keeping as Robert's. Kin and Kira's companions frequented the premises, and I wished to safeguard my belongings from exposure to strangers. And with that, I must bid you farewell for the present. I sincerely hope that my mother honors my desire for a cessation of contact and ceases to intrude upon my life hereafter. Furthermore, I intend to broach the topic of potential adoption. With Leah following the conclusion of the holiday season, she radiated evident joy during our initial discourse on the matter. Once more, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for your compassionate expressions and astute counsel. Your collective insights have furnished me with the means to navigate this predicament with greater dexterity. I acknowledge my remaining vestiges of immaturity, yet I perceive that this trial has served to fortify my character and broaden my perspective on matters. May fortune favor you all. Upon further deliberation, I regret to admit that I lack his contact information. We never deemed it necessary to sustain correspondence, as our exchanges remained largely perfunctory, consisting of customary greetings. Likewise, I do not possess Kira's digits. Regrettably, it appears that my interactions with Robert have drawn to an ultimate close the moment I last left my mother's house. Alas, my interactions with my mother's bloodline are rather scarce. They constitute only a trio of souls: my maternal grandmother, aunt, and uncle. My uncle resides several hours' drive from this place, alongside his own family, and so I only glimpsed him occasionally during my stay with my mother, and our discussions were but short and formal. I hold mere polite conversation with my grandma and my aunt. We send occasional festive greetings by text to one another. For my birthdays, they have been known to give me a gift. The funds are then loaded into my father's bank card. Sadly, that is all. Furthermore, the infrequent times I met them, our exchanges were casual, often just discussing how each other's lives were going, but nothing else. Therefore, I elected not to send them an invite to my approaching 18th, and they, in turn, have failed to send me a text after the situation with my mother exploded. With all of this, it is a shame that they don't care too much. A visual from an acquaintance of my spouse, showcased on their Instagram feed, revealed a scene of my wife, tearful, embracing several companions, accompanied by the caption, "She's going to be an amazing mom." Acting on instinct, I promptly contacted her, and she answered quite fast. "I have some news, darling," she said. I responded plainly, "I'm already aware. You are with child." She voiced her surprise. "Wow, dearest. How did you discern this?" With some sharpness, I stated, "Social media. Not thoughtful enough to call me first, huh?" Her response was a startled, "What? I didn't post a thing." I retorted with, "Indeed, yet your acquaintances did. A fine way to be told I'm destined to be a dad, I suppose. Thanks, and I'm done here." I ended the call, overwhelmed with intense emotions. I abstained from answering numerous follow-up calls until my sibling reached out not long after. My sister began by asking about the current circumstances, as she had just entered my in-laws' household to find chaos, arguments, and my spouse barricaded in her personal space. Sharing the events, I received my sister's disbelief. There is absolutely no way she would commit such action. Defending, I countered with, "But she is." After promising investigation, my sister got back to me at a later point, at which I had managed to clear the mental fog and now thought it was just a thoughtless act from an acquaintance broadcasting sensitive information. I was informed that it was after getting confirmation of a delayed menstruation that they had bought several pregnancy tests, which returned with positive results. They excitedly communicated to her parental figures and texted some local acquaintances. From confirmation to the revealing post, just 2 hours had elapsed. My wife told 10+ individuals. The dispute, as was relayed to me, stemmed from the poster's decision to go public, not from the numerous individuals that now also had insight. The group considered it inconsiderate to reveal such information. Eventually, I chose to call my spouse, finding her in a flood of tears. After apologizing, she claimed her motive was to shock me with the news, which was the reason for the delay. Skeptical, I commented that if a shock were the aim, that she would not have had plans to tell me once I called. In response to a sudden loss of words on her end, I asked that I was given time to rethink recent information, and was met with frustration from her side that stated I could not desert her side, and rather she said, "We should discuss everything." The final nail in the coffin for me was me asking if she would only lie once more, and I ended the contact. So many individuals began to message me that it became far too draining to continue, with unexpected sadness even making me tear up, and I am not one to often express melancholy. I'm not trying to cause something big, but it truly feels like a truck made direct contact. A text from my sister provided much needed affirmation and reasoning. Hey, I'm aware that this causes pain, but do not make it break you. You will be a great father, as it is just a great event. The mere consideration of welcoming my progeny into this world is the sole concept driving my actions. It is but my deepest hope that this baby be gifted with health. Probably I will have to force myself to accept everything so my wife would not feel too many negative actions during our period of pregnancy, and to be honest, I think that's just what I am going to do. The first thing I will have to do is sulk myself. Edit. I shared my account here hoping it would vanish into the void, to now awaken finding so many responses. The fact so many cared is unreal. I'm writing to clarify that I do not perceive that my wife was unfaithful. Our lifestyle consists of her working remotely, cameras in the domicile, and a lack of girl nights, with the exception of having some interactions with a coworker in this city that the three of us do from time to time. In addition, my wife is incredibly clingy, as in, she texts me almost every half hour when I am at work, and when I'm home she is with me most of the time, which I enjoy but sometimes can be too much. It is also unlikely that she didn't say anything sooner due to a recent squabble. Having said that, everyone in the friends group and the city we once resided in are all very nice individuals, with my sister being a part of that same group. To most living in the same city, they all interact frequently with each other. This is out of character for her in a number of ways, and why I feel wrong, because she would never have the intent to be this thoughtless. Due to that fact, I shared to my wife that all is well, and that in the near future I'll be arriving down there to communicate. She happened to be conscious and inquired if she could initiate a call. Upon her calling, she stated her desire to return to our shared home. I then replied, stating that I was presently en route to transport her back. "Are we in good standing?" she questioned, to which I simply responded in the affirmative. In response, she started to tear up. I then said that joy was on my side, and I was extremely eager to behold her, with the disclaimer being that a conversation would have to occur. That calmed her. Update. The events of late have been sorted to a degree, and as it is now that I feel equipped with the entire narrative, allow me to provide a more complete understanding of the events that had occurred. The moment I made entry to her blood relations' abode, she greeted me with a loving hug and non-stop apologetic statements that she was in the wrong. I told her that our chat could commence following some rest, as it was my exhaustion that made communication difficult. We both fell asleep, still close. Following our awakenings, our conversation felt like a looping track, with me continuing to query the causes, and she just repeating and restating her mistakes, and that everything that occurred afterwards did not register due to it happening during one of our biggest milestones. I tried to make an effort in seeking to extract further detail from this information, to but no success, so I had given up. Upon me doing so, she then told of her responsibility, and had no interest in generating excuses. I stated that I had absolved her and that it was all okay now. Despite that, I continued by having a conversation with her friend that was by her side that day, and her claims reflected a degree of information that added further color to the events that were to come. From the account that had been provided to me, my spouse and her confidant spent an hour being ecstatic and thinking of creative statements or ways to tell me of the developments. It was once her blood relative came that they elected to broadcast it to her social circle, with the reasoning of seeking more creative output for how to introduce this news. It was understood by all in attendance that no one would make mention of the event to individuals outside the core group until me, and one individual betrayed this, and that was the person who posted all of that sensitive information for others to see. Upon addressing the culprit, they simply said that they did not care, and cut off all communication and access after being confronted. To this day, her motivations have not been identified. Could be that it was simple spite and jealousy. It should be known that what the friend stated reflected the sister's account. A major component to note is that my spouse, upon receiving the initial call from my side, simply declared, "Forget it, I'm saying all of this to him," and proceeded to communicate it to me herself with some level of glee. Fast forward to us leaving. For our residence. Following a more thorough comprehension of the events, my spouse expressed that she was very apologetic, and that me and our future were priority one, and everything that happened was idiotic. By her request, we are now en route to couples therapy in the approaching week, but in my eyes, it is not required. In her eyes, I may have disregarded the situation too quickly and need to vent everything at my discretion, But her empathy for me has been more than enough of a factor in forgiving her and writing it off as a one-off occurrence. This was compounded by seeing our gynecologist. What has been further compounding the issues is being told that an early-term baby may miscarry. However, tests came back positive, with the term clocking in at roughly 6 weeks. For now, everything seems fine with the circumstances.